We have the footage.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Got the like, share, and subscribe button down there for everybody if you'd care to hit that for me. PayPal link in the details section, and of course the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. We've got John and Russ with us again tonight. How you doing, guys?
Good. How you doing?
Great. I'm awesome. We got nice weather again today. 65, 68 degrees, something like that. It looks like John's got some nice weather down there.
Yeah, 70s here.
Awesome. Well, like we talked about last night, we did the third part of cancellation of debt from Christina. And if you go back and see that video, you'll see the links to all of her 3 parts. And then we did a review on each of those 3 parts. Tonight, I want to go over parts of the U.S. Code under 31 U.S. Code and 31 CFR, as well as we're going to drop that one in there, 20 CFR 422.103 and 104. That's at Social Security benefits. Who is eligible to be assigned a Social Security number and stuff like that. So we're going to go over some definitions as it relates to that cancellation of debt, things like that. Let me pull up our screen. Let's see here. First, I've got a short video I want to watch with it. I want everybody to watch because I want to show you something that some people don't understand about this record and how it works. Okay? There are people that have authorities, and this is a unique situation that shows the authority and how to delegate that authority, already knowing to these yahoos that insist on pulling you over alongside of the road. And this guy, despite what it looks like, the guy has some knowledge and he's using it. He's actually using his head. So pay attention to this video. And again, he doesn't have very many subs, so I urge you to go over, at least check out the channel, and maybe think about subbing him and seeing what he's got and helping him out. I think he's got a strong standing in what's going on, and he ain't afraid of the lion's den. So please pay attention.
Can you drop a link in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that. And it's called Kimbo Bot. His name is Kim Sargento. So I'll grab this and drop it in the chat for everybody and enjoy. Pay attention and take notes, folks. It is as simple as this man makes it if you start using your reason and logic and show them where the hell they get their authority. It ain't from the upper guys. You want to run with the big dogs? You better know how to talk with the big dogs.
Okay, what can I help you with? Well, first of all, I stopped you because when you made a right turn, you were halfway in the number 2 lane and not all the way in the right turn lane. Is that right? Yes. See your driver's license, please. Certainly. Okay, you have a registration insurance, sir? Yes. You need to get it out? Yes, please. Registration. You know what? I mean, the car's registered, right? Yes. Okay, well, I can't dig through this stuff. I'm moving this over to my...
See what he did there? He's already got acknowledgement from the officer that the car is registered. That's telling you that the officer already ran the tags and knows it's registered. So this routine here is just to get you to do things that otherwise aren't really required. He's already determined that it's registered. And now he's going forth with that discernment that he's using that isn't qualified. So pay attention.
My friend's place. I'm homeless. I sleep in my car. Okay. So if you want to just write me a ticket for, you want proof of registration insurance, I can straighten that out at the court because I don't believe I did anything wrong. Okay. And I think that you're just fishing. No, you made a wide right.
So he's being straightforward and honest with him. You know, no bullshit. That's my kind of guy. Okay? Again, we're talking about most of these officers that I see nowadays are pretty damn young, and a lot of them being female. And this isn't good for society, I assure you. The guy sitting in the car, despite him being homeless and living in his car, he's using reason and logic. And this is what tells me the man, doesn't matter where he's at in life, he's still going to behave the same way. Even in the most bottom part of that quagmire, yet he's still upright, honorable, and respectful and just stating plain facts with no emotions. This is what it's about, folks.
Do you have that on video? I do. You have on video that I made a wide right turn when I made the turn down the street. Correct. From 17th Street. From 17th Street. So yes. I was not in the, and you have it on video. Yes. And your name is Officer Fott. Yes. B. Fott. And what's your badge number? 651. And I'll be able to see that video? You have to subpoena it. I'll have to subpoena it? How about FOIA request? A what?
See, he's making a distinction here. There's a difference between a FOIA request and a subpoena. Subpoena is once the court action's already started. Okay? So what he's talking about is he can go to the police department with a FOIA before court even happens. That's what we're out here doing, folks. We're bringing forth the record. See, the record is in error. And when you bring forth the record before they get a chance to do a trial, which is known as a trial balance, you're checking that balance already, letting them know, sorry, but that would put the general ledger out of balance. See, that's where the obligation sits. So watch and pay attention to what this guy does to the street cop when it comes to going to a greater authority and a greater obligation. Pay attention. You think this guy's at the bottom because he's living in his car? I already watched this video, so I got heads up. Pay attention.
How about a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act? What about a Freedom of Information Act? Get that video? Subpoena it. Well, you're entitled to subpoena it. That's not the same as a subpoena. A FOIA is just, you don't have to go through the courts. You just submit a formal request for it. You could, I don't know. All right. So you're going to...
See, you don't go through the courts because you do it before the court action appears. You go down that same day or the next day and get a FOIA request for that footage. Now you can bring forth the footage in a document, in documentary form, documentary evidence, saying, well, see, he fails the obligation. See, are you obligated to commit an offense against one of the people simply because you presume and discern by your own officer discretion that he's subject to the jurisdiction when the record clearly shows that he's not, that it's been a presumption all this time?
Write me a ticket then.
See, that's what they operate on, is that presumption. Pay attention again. That presumption is going to get defeated here.
Say that. Oh, okay. Well, I would like to see your insurance though, to make sure you have insurance. I do have insurance. I just you know what? I'm having a tough night and I don't want to dig this car out. And so if you want to write me a ticket for failure to prove insurance, be my guest. All right? I have insurance. But if you want me to write, I'll straighten out at the court. Oh, by the way.
See, he keeps going back. I'll just straighten it out at court. I'm not going to argue with you. Do what you need to do. You can't tell me what to do. So according to your rules, you go ahead and do what you need to do. I've got insurance. I'm not going to go through the absolute mindlessness of having to dig it out when you've already looked up my registration, and obviously by reason and sanity or reason and logic, let's call it, because these guys are insane. You've already got the ID, and now you're going to sit there and placate that I have to also show insurance. It would be a good presumption to believe that if I've already showed you the ID and you already know I've got the registration, that it's a good presumption that I do have insurance and that I am stating the truth, that I'll just straighten it out with the court. You write the tickets and I'll just straighten it out with the court. See, that leaves it on him to fulfill the obligation of proving that his accusation in that ticket of failure to show insurance was accurate. Now he looks like the idiot. So he's already showing that foundation here just by his own statements. Reason and logic, folks.
I got to inform you something. I am on federal pretrial release with the FBI.
Oops. Federal pretrial release with the FBI. See, he's already under supervision. Do you think the FBI is going to be able to say, okay, well, we'll give you jurisdiction to give him a traffic violation that's not lawful? See, he's already under a greater authority and under that supposed supervision. So they're the ones that are claiming authority over his persona and his body. So just like the Postal Service, who is a federal agent under exclusive jurisdiction, why would they call the local police and hand over that jurisdiction if they don't? If they understand they already have that authority, wouldn't they just enforce it themselves? See what kind of predicament that puts them in? See, it puts them in the predicament that now they have to have the FBI be able to support them in this fucking fraud. Bad faith stops. See, that's what it's about, folks.
Yep, and Keith, we're volunteering as trust agents, and we don't know how deep the hole gets.
Yeah. And that's because a lot of these people are going through this Dunning-Kruger and narcissism where they think they're more intelligent than the rest of the people. But when some of us pop up and say, wait a minute here, there's something wrong, and start pointing it out, then they get butthurt because now all of a sudden, what are they going to do? Run to the brother that's been telling them this all along, even though they know they're supporting some falsity? It's just insanity. It's Hitler's willing executioners. I'm just doing my job.
So I'm going to have to report this interaction with the pretrial release federal agents or officers.
See, he's got an ankle monitor there. See the ankle monitor? They've actually got him on a monitor. They already know that his GPS signal stopped here. So it's going to correlate with the time. They're going to know that he's telling the truth. Hey, some dumbass pulled me over in bad faith.
So that's why
tried to take jurisdiction from you, man.
I'm required to let you know that. You're on search and seizure? No, I am not. No?
Nope. He's not on search and seizure. Again, another distinct difference between or before and after. See, it's an investigation, and they've got him under supervision during a pretrial investigation. So it's not seizure. It's not seizure until conviction and sentencing, and now you're under full supervision of parole. This is pretrial.
And I do not consent to search. And I'm not on search and seizure. I've not been convicted of anything. This is a condition of pretrial release. So I can see the wheels turning, but that's not the case. So I still have my constitutional rights. Okay, hold on. All right.
And that's pre-trial release. And what we're actually talking about here in these commercial venues, it's known as a trial balance. And I think I've mentioned that before in one of my previous videos, but maybe we'll go over that again sometime. It's actually called a trial balance. That's why you see the scales of justice. It's literally a trial balance.
And Lady Liberty is, or Lady Justice is blindfolded.
Yep. I'm going to pull it forward here because he doesn't say anything this whole time until the officer comes back.
Here you go, sir. Have a good night. Thank you.
Here you go, sir. Have a good night. Here you go, sir. Have a good night. That was quick and sweet, right? So don't tell me that you can't resolve these issues on the side of the road. Don't tell me that you can't do this stuff. This guy went through this, and most people would be in fear. he used reason and logic. He displaced all the emotional bullshit and used straight up reason and logic. Listen, if I'm already under pretrial supervision, then you'll have to talk to these guys. If it was issued by the Social Security Administration and you no longer want to accept that contractual obligation, you can rescind those signatures and operate it conducively as the benefactor. They are already the trustee. They already have a duty and obligation to fulfill with their agreement with the Department of Defense under the enumeration at birth, under full faith and credit, in good faith.
That's powerful, Keith. Very.
Absolutely. I think it's important that we learn how to express this stuff and do so without the emotions and all the trauma-built drama queen actions and performances. Again, you do not have a right to go out and protest. You have a right to petition the government, but that does not mean you have a right to go out and physically stop traffic, which is a violation of others' rights of freedom of movement. It just does not make sense to try to uphold your rights by infringing upon others, no matter what the venue. Go ahead, John.
That's the right way to say it. A lot of people think it's the right to travel, but it's freedom. That's first.
Right, freedom of movement, and this goes even from not just the physical venue, but from the intellectual, the intangible, the metaphysical, where your thoughts are projected out and you now create a movement. Your body does this every day with every breath it's moving. And it's done so with an intended thought. I don't come on here and it just automatically happens. I have an intent in my mind to come up here and do this expression. And that's what we're dealing with. Everybody has their various expressions, and we have to learn how to correlate those with each other's, not in a manner of emotions, but reason and logic to see how we differ and how we can come closer together in those differences, because that's all they are. When it comes to this right and wrong thing, we have to realize things like the Sentinelese, according to them, their actions are right in defending for their natural habitat the way they do, whereas the Christian guy that invaded under the doctrine of discovery to try to impose his faith and belief upon them kind of ended his culture real quick. Theirs is still going, while the rest of the Christian culture looked back and called it murder. These people don't even understand your language. How can you don't have a lingua franca that can help convey that to them? You would have to destroy their language just like you did the natives here in America. It's an oral history. How are you going to do that? You have to bring in that lingua franca, the written word. They don't have a written communication. Native Americans didn't have a written communication. Funny how this works. But anyway.
So Keith, you were talking about learning how to talk with these people. And I'm trying to figure out how to talk to this Emergency Management Division of the National Guard, because in their own little webpage, it says they're here to help the people in emergencies. And I'm saying there's an emergency. I don't have a military. I'm going to need your help. And the gal that I did talk to tried to blow me off, saying, he's just going to tell you the same thing. We don't do anything without the governor. And I agreed with her. I said, yes, of course. But that's what these other people are supposed to be doing as well, and they're not.
Right. And that's that United States citizenship again. See, the governor is working commercially at the behest of the president, the commander-in-chief of the nation of the United States, I guess. And then the governor is the commander-in-chief at the state level. So all they're doing is passing forth that military script through delegations, and you have to hold that delegation to the utmost authority. Again, letting them know that that United States citizen is the internationally protected person, and that was the conference of the nationality, known to be a United States business. And in all of these commercial transactions, that's exactly what the problem is. It's all been presumed. The legal fiction is a presumption presented to the court based upon the facts that are there already. If those facts are in error, all you have to do is show the errors, and it defeats the presumption. Okay? This is done through documentary evidence. And it's a requirement for government obligations. So before we go anywhere, we're first going to go back to the 20 U.S. 20 CFR 422.103, the social.
In reality, Keith, dude, I mean, I guess if we look back, obviously all of this is directional based on intent. And if we
Correct.
never intended, if we never intended to subject ourselves to this bullshit, why couldn't we deal with our people locally, where it's coming from the federal level as that clerk in them that's doing those transactions with the CBOE at the Chicago Board of Options Exchange? And isn't that where all of this finance is being really traded at?
Well, it's what's the slugs.
Because I noticed when I was looking at that email from that clerk, and she said that the CBOE, her and her staff, and the CBOE. Now, what the hell are they doing there? So then there's a role there with that clerk, obviously.
State and local government series. These are the local municipal bonds. It says state and local government series. Now, it's the county that has a foreign trade zone from the state. The municipalities are organized under the county as corporate entities allowed to issue their own bonds. Okay?
Still, that all falls under the SS-16, though, correct?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what bonds they use yet. All I know is they enter the bonds.
The SS-16 that allows the circuit to even operate at the city and municipality level under that religious order, the certificate of election coverage. That's how the old circuits run at the county level.
And like as deep as you have, I don't know, but that would make sense.
Yes, and they have to file one of those SS-16 every month. So, and that SS-16 is where the federal funds come in from the Federal Contributions Act. And so they're doing the options exchange right there within the city and municipal. They're controlling it all from that circuit. And the master commissioner acts as a liaison to the circuit.
Yeah, and they're each recorded by the address going to and from.
And then they are running that address is what's named Charities or something.
Right, and it's that address that's naming the parties. Again, that's why it's important to understand the distinction between that national address format and a foreign address format. Again, if you don't give them a last name, they can't correlate those addresses with a legal name. There's no last name to match it up to. So it doesn't matter what the fuck the number is. They know it's not a legal fiction. They know it's not the agent. It's somebody else foreign to that particular public trust, not a public officer in the capacity of a plaintiff or defendant.
Right.
And that's by the mere expression. You fix it. Everybody's been so indoctrinated to believe that they have to follow that address format and that they have to use the first and last name, and that's wrong. I've shown it many times. I use it all the time. Anyway, under 20 CFR 422.103, this is that Social Security numbers. And it says the Social Security Social Security Administration maintains a record. So they're the holder of the record of the earnings. So that's the income record. Okay? So they're the holder of the income record for the IRS. Understand that. For each individual assigned a Social Security number. So the Social Security number is in fact known as a taxpayer identification number, and therefore the assignment of that Social Security number attached to an individual's name is the assignment of that individual as a taxpayer. The individual's name and Social Security number identify the record. This would be the same with the driver's license. Notice on the driver's license or the state ID, they do not use the same legal fiction as on the Social Security card. They do not use the first and last name in that order. They put the last name first, comma, first and middle name, and it's not in upper and lowercase, it's in all uppercase. So that driver's license name and its number identify the DMV record, the Department of Motor Vehicles record. So that the wages or self-employment income, so it is income, like I said, earnings reported. Reported, it's the same thing as earnings, for or by the individual can be per. Is that lie or lie? Anyway, you get the point. I'm just showing you something that might be coincidental, might just be my opinion, just might be my wicked eyes. I don't know, but I see per lie. Properly can be properly posted to the individual's record. So we're only, again, talking about a record. No matter how you look at it, they consistently define it as the record.
But
So let's go back.
It comes out, Keith, as like a linked or a conversion account, and we're an accommodation party if we sign, right?
Correct. We're supposed to, as holder in due course, we can enforce accommodation. If we don't do so, somebody else will, and they'll enforce it upon us to accommodate them as if they were the obligated party on the accommodation. It's the same thing. It's a bunch of babble. The obligation is the accommodation. They're just using different language. The law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions, and in each jurisdiction, they might have a couple, 2 or 3 different terms that mean almost the same thing. Says under, back to documentary evidence, requirement for government obligations, says an amount. First thing, an amount. That's the enumeration. Shall be recorded as an obligation of the United States government only when supported by documentary evidence of. So the enumeration at birth, it's not a dollar amount, folks. It's an enumeration, period. It doesn't say the amount, an amount of credit, an amount of money, an amount of dollars, an amount of pennies, amount of gold in weight, an amount of stamps. It does not say any other representative of value except an amount. Shall be recorded as an obligation of the United States government only when supported by documentary evidence of a binding agreement between an agency and another person. That's the conference of a nationality of a United States citizen upon enumeration at birth. It can't get any simpler than that, folks.
Is that where the federal contribution is coming from? The registered, residents?
Identification of the res, the body, the property.
So wow. And I see that because even in certificate on the certificate of election coverage under the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, which is that SS-16, which is also a religious order to take a vow of poverty. And
Yeah,
in
and I
that
don't think a lot. Yeah, and I don't.
certificate is a share in a joint stock as well.
Yeah, and I don't think people understand. Let me pull up the screen here. I want people to understand this thing about the vow of poverty doesn't mean that you live poor. Doesn't mean that you give up everything you have. Well, technically, what it means is that you are allowed to let your cup welleth over, so that you have what is within your means, and anything extra you can give out. That's your gift. You've come upon an age maturity, an age of discernment, that you only need certain things and you have a want for nothing. So when you are generous and have given throughout your life, and you're living in your years, and people continuously give back to you, and it's an excess and a surplus, it's that gratitude and prosperity that's so forcefully abundant that you're more willing to give it out. I have found my life a lot easier by not having all those properties. You think I really need a car? No. Do I want a car? Yeah. If I get a car someday, I'm going to certainly appreciate it, but I'm not going to be using it in an affront against the system. I'm going to make damn well sure that I know how to enforce it in its proper use. And that's all I want to do. I'm not here to offend anybody. I'm not here to say that I'm your boss or admit that you're my boss. I've been screaming, you ain't my daddy all my life. And I believe that's true here. I'm not your daddy either. But I also agree that there's certain points and elements, no matter who we are, in our arguments or our agreements, we can all learn from each other. We can agree on things and find out that we agree on things that we never really thought about, but it goes along with what we already agreed on, and build on that. That's what we would all hope would be a best communication. But that's not the way it works out, because people don't understand the simplicity. Everybody wants to make it so hard. And that's because you take upon all these conveniences, these comforts, and you think it's making your life easier. Anyway, let's get back into it. So it says, that is in writing, in a way and form, and for a purpose authorized by law. This again is 5 U.S.C. 301. Again, it's applicable to the Department of Defense. So it is military, and it is a direct order from them that has been misconstrued and misapplied, under which there is a minimum birth registration requirement. This is the enumeration at birth under departmental regulations. And that means you have to be part of the military. You weren't. However, the documentation somehow misconstrues that you were born in a hospital, and nobody made a proper claim on that material property. Material. Nobody came forth and said that there was a Father which art in heaven, and a legacy heir was born therefore from. And executed before the end of the period of availability for obligation of the appropriation or fund used for specific goods to be delivered, real property be bought or leased, or work or service to be provided. So again, that binding agreement, as it performs today's modern terms, very simply put, the way I see it, is that a piece of paper is a negotiable instrument, either blank or whether offered by somebody else that already has certain terms and conditions on it that I can line item veto and overwrite to make so appropriate that they recognize my credit, the equal consideration for the credence of what I put into it, to make sure that the lingua franca that we're using helps perfect the instrumentation, so that it is integral and that it does withhold or uphold the authorizations of law. If it doesn't or it can't, if it doesn't, I try to help it do so. And if it can't and it's an impossibility, then we have to strike it down and start over or refer to something else that's already standing and binding, like the spiritual principles that are supposedly already guiding us all, whether we know these statutes, codes, rules, and regulations or not. And this goes to the scriptures that explain that there are children out there that follow the law without knowing the law because it's inherently in their heart. They don't need to learn to read and write. They already inherently know right from wrong, and that's how simple it is.
That's what I'm really all about right there. Just I don't believe in all the confusion. I mean, it's really simple, no harm. But I mean, it's real interesting the more we get into this because of that SS16. They're the one enumerating that birth that right there and working with the state at the state level, from what I see through that local municipality and county government, because that master commissioner controls the accounting of the social as a liaison for the circuit court. We know that clerk's a judicial officer.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. Is like I've said before, they've got a court registry investment system.
Absolutely,
And
Chris.
that's what they're doing, is they're entering everything into an investment system, and that's that creation of that municipal bond.
So we should be able to go right to the clerk and straighten all of this shit out realistically.
That's what I've been saying. You hold the clerk responsible. The clerk is the one that issues everything. The judge orders it, but they're working together, coherently together. That's conspiracy if you can prove it. That's why you go after the clerk, in my opinion. And it's not actually the clerk. It's after the record keeping that they're doing and showing that the malfeasance of trust by letting this error continue on, even though they know it. The first duty in law is to give legal notice that there's an out of balance account that won't equal up to the general ledger. And how do I know this? Because they're posing an account down there for $8,000 some odd $100 against this little Keith Orland, and I call up to the Treasury offset, and they say they know of no such debt. So that means there's something out of balance there. It's that simple. Okay.
Well, to not even discuss it would be a miscarriage of justice alone.
Exactly. They have an agreement already. That's what I've been saying. They've already got an agreement, and if it's contractual, like they say, first of all, that's privity. That means privacy. That means they're not supposed to be dragging us into the public. Okay. It also has that equal consideration, equal benefit that I was talking about. Now, if it's trust, again, it's a matter of privacy, of protection of the property and the beneficiary, so that he may receive the asset, may receive the property, the gift so bestowed by the grant, not the trustee. See, there's already a grant there. So let's look at the next one. Remember the term loan, a gift of God, a loan agreement showing the amount and terms of repayment. See, that legal name, in effect, from its original source, is in fact a greater truth that it was a gift of God before it was converted in form of per son. And now there are supposed to be terms of repayment. This is the equal consideration, equal benefit. If the United States get to benefit in a commercial venue through a taxing and interest rate and inflation rate and borrowing and lending system, then you get that equal consideration. So does mom.
I believe that transfer happens right there through that master commissioner.
Right. Well, It's the hospital.
Ironically,
It's the
a
hospital birth
independent
clerk.
contractor, and it's
Well,
an
it's the
independent contractor.
well, it's the hospital birth clerk. That's where it all starts. If we reconcile
Wait.
that first, then we know that we can't grow up to be residents. So we prevent that point at all. Then they don't get to convert it. So we've got to convert it back at the hospital where it was originally converted through the birth clerk. That's the big one that's issuing all this stuff before it even gets to the courts. See, the birth clerk at the hospital, that military venue there with its own post office, used its postmaster to communicate with another postmaster, the county registrar. So initially, the original obligation stems from the birth clerk at the hospital. That's that statement of live birth. That's the one mom signed as the informant. That's the original instrument. That's the original underlying documentary evidence of the obligation. It was the first one entered into the general ledger with seals. 2 seals showing full faith and credit. Hospital seal, county registrar seal. Now the state will issue a birth certificate correlating that as a collateral instrument with 2 seals. Also full faith and credit. The evidence is already there. The documentary evidence is already there. All you have to do is know what it's qualifying and what it's supposed to be as diverse to what it actually is, if it can or does not apply to you. I wasn't born in the military, first and foremost, so for that reason, it doesn't apply to me. On the day I was born, I couldn't be a resident being determined as a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. I also couldn't be enumerated as a United States citizen being gifted a nationality known as a United States business without being able to operate it. That would have been put in a trusteeship. Is that what I did when I signed the SS5 at age 18? Did I take on that United States business that was a probated estate being administrated by the state, and now I was authorized merely as an administrator, not knowing I was administrating my own affairs and giving up all my property because I didn't know the capacity of what I was supposedly operating in? See, that's that selective service number now. Selective service office, the area office, which is responsible for all operations and administrations of the board or boards within its local board or boards within its jurisdiction. It's all a military jurisdiction, no matter how you look at it. Department of Defense, applicable to Department of Defense. That's who funds everything. You, the creditor. An order required by law to be placed with an agency. To be placed with an agency. So who's placing it with an agency? Well, if we look at that resident term, that's a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent. The officer is the one that takes an oath. The agent is the one that has to have a license and proving a contract with such oath taker. This is Trading with the Enemy Act, making sure that they're not trading with an enemy. Show me your ID so I can make sure as an officer in the military department, I'm not going to be court-martialed for trading with an enemy. That's their requirement. An order issued under a law authorizing purchases without advertising. An order issued under a law authorizing purchases without advertising. That identification or driver's license is an advertisement. It has the minimum requirements for a listing agreement, which is an advertising term, a name and address. Coincidentally, again, if you're buying or selling or a ship to party in those commercial activities wherein they advertise, you can use a widely recognized commercially identifiable number in lieu of the name and address. So you can make purchases without advertising who you are and where you're at. When necessary, because of public exigency, necessity, urgency, emergency, requirement, for perishable substances or subsistence supplies, or within specific monetary limits. Oh, wait a minute. An amount shall be recorded as an obligation of the United States by documentary evidence of a binding agreement between an agency and another person, including an agency that is in writing, in a way and form, and for a purpose authorized by law, and executed before the end of the period of availability for obligation of the appropriation or fund used for specific goods to be delivered, real property to be bought or leased, or worker service to be provided. Within specific monetary limits. You mean like those two seals for full faith and credit. The unpaid balance of money or its equivalent deposited in a financial institution in the usual course of business in which they have already given credit or are obligated to give credit. See, that document itself is the evidence. Documentary evidence. Requirement for government obligations. It's showing on that document with those seals that it already has a full faith and credit establishment with the two seals from the origination, the underlying obligation held by the birth clerk at the hospital where you were born and the county register where it was originally recorded. A grant or subsidy payable. The existence of those documents proves a grant of a burial trust. When you're born, that enumeration is a probated estate so that in case you die for some godforsaken reason and your family has no funds or anything to bury you, you will be given a rightful burial by the state in a state-owned cemetery. From appropriations made for payment of or contributions to amounts required to be paid in specific amounts fixed by law or under formulas prescribed by law. So that's what we're dealing with again, is we don't have any real amounts fixed by law or fixed by law. They can all be formulas prescribed by law because everything's negotiable. Under an agreement authorized by law or under plans approved consistent with and authorized by law, a liability that may result from pending litigation. This is why yesterday in the cancellation of debt, I was trying to point out again that if you cancel that debt, what it does is it stops the funding being provided by the United States in error and shows that the true funding is coming from you and is a credit and not a debit from a bankrupt corporation. In fact, they've got the polarities wrong, and the currency is flowing from me to the United States and not the United States to me. Okay? This is why I don't want for anything. I already know that once this paperwork works out, and me not being a greedy motherfucker to begin with, I'm still okay with no matter how it works out. It is what it is. It's meant to be, or it's not. I'm either right or I'm wrong. Maybe I am insane. Maybe I am confused. Maybe I do have a different value system. Maybe my value system is fucked up. Maybe I should be chasing that bag.
I feel exactly the same way, buddy.
Employment or services of persons or expenses of travel under law. So while you're operating for the performance of the functions of office, or for performing the functions of public office under that driver's license, you're supposed to be getting expensive travel. Services provided by public utilities. See, there's already an agreement. Other legal liability of the government against an available appropriation or fund. Internationally protected persons. Say it with me, guys. Everybody on panel, say it with me, please. Internationally protected persons. One more time.
Internationally protected
persons. Now, I want to ask everybody out there, those viewing the video now, those that will view this video in the future, reason and logic. If the United States conferred a nationality upon you, no matter what state you were supposedly born in, no matter what town you lived in, no matter where you were born at, and it's conference of a nationality, which is basically a gift, and it's their creation, and they're proud of it, and they think it has power and shows honor and integrity and loyalty and these things that are patriotic. Under the international protected persons in their own codes, don't you think that they would rightly protect their own United States citizens, knowing they're United States businesses, and that if they did so, that would rightly help correct their own goddamned situation? And I did say that correctly, I believe. Please correct me if you think I'm wrong. Goddamned situation. Rightly dividing the word of truth. Piercing the corporate veil. A statement of obligations provided to Congress or a committee of Congress by an agency shall include only those amounts that are obligations consistent with this or with subsection A of this section. That seems like subsection A and all of these. So that statement's kind of redundant. It's saying, listen to what this is saying up here. Subsection A says, an amount shall be recorded as an obligation of the United States government only when supported by documentary evidence of. Bring you guys right back up here, guys. Documentary evidence. I've got a nice little thing here from Federal UPS Express. Next day air server, not opened. They've got a little sticker on here. Can't read exactly what's under there, but it's Department of Health and Human something. And then over here it's got the address. I imagine once I open that I can see that. But this is documentary evidence. And inside of it there's 3 birth certificates. I've got the order number and PIN number from Christine down at Vital Check, who's a third-party vendor. Got a receipt showing how much I paid for it online and everything, online receipt. Just printed it off from the online transaction. So I've got the receipt. I've got the officer that I spoke to. I've got my certification of trust for the organization. I've got a little note here about the trust, just a little document for private notation. And we're going to start moving forth with the cases down here at the courthouse to help establish the correction of those records, because those are all probate records with a summary that have a summary judgment. All 94 of them say summary judgment, except of course for the last one here, dismissed, which is a tickler because they sent me a letter saying that the costs are taxed to the defendant. And like I said last night, you can't possibly do that and get it beyond me, because again, if the court already withdrew the initial bond that they issued for failure to appear and issued a bench warrant for $350, if they withdrew that bond and then sent me a new summons but failed to send me a waiver of personal jurisdiction, so I did my line item vetoing and overriding and the qualified signature and all that by Benefactor, and letting them know that they didn't send a waiver of personal jurisdiction, so then they dismissed the charges. They never obtained personal jurisdiction to name a defendant. Okay, so what they're doing is still trying to impose that the court somehow managed to magically obtain personal jurisdiction when that was fully rebutted and the basis for denial of the charges to begin with. You can't obtain personal jurisdiction if I'm not within your jurisdiction. I don't care how much you want to try to use the Social Security number, selective service number, any kind of bank accounts or anything. Again, the name and number identify the record, not me. And that is your binding agreement, not mine. So let's get on to the next one, which is Part 240, 31 CFR, endorsement and payment of checks drawn on the United States Treasury. So as we saw in the recent cancellation of debts, when you see those security instruments with that little thing on the bottom, a lot of people call them vouchers and coupons. It's the same thing as a check. It looks just like a check. That's what it is. It's just in a different form, but it has the same elements of a check. So look at it as a check and understand the language. And it says, scope and regulations. The regulations in this part prescribe, there's that prescribed term, the requirements for endorsement and conditions for payment of checks drawn on the United States Treasury. These regulations also establish procedures for collection of amounts due the United States Treasury based on claims arising from the breach of presentment guarantees. So when we get those instruments and they have that full faith and credit on them, and they fail the guarantee, and that's a breach of the presentment, that's dishonor, and as holder in due course, I get to enforce the honor, but I have to do it through the United States by putting everything in the interest of the United States on the account of the United States for full acquittance and discharge, so that no person shall be held liable in any court. This is the only way to make all parties whole. letting them recognize where the true obligation sits. And that's with the United States and not with any other agency. Remember, it's federal government means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service and the Postal Regulatory Commission. Based on client claims arising from the breach of presentments, guarantees by presenting banks and other endorsers of Treasury checks, when checks bearing material defects What is the defect? The defect is a signature, or alterations or forged dispersing officer signatures are presented for payment and are paid. Material defect is the signature. You never taught how to qualify it. The next one is the definitions, and I think I've got that one pulled up. Yes, that's the next window. So let's go on to the next window. And here's the first one. 240.2 CFR 31, administrative offset or offset. For purposes of this part, has the same meaning as defined in 31 U.S.C. So this is going to be another set of definitions. And again, the very first one, A1, is going to be the definition. And 31 CF Part 285. So we'll take a look at both of these. Agency means any agency, department, instrumentality. Office, commission, board, service, or other establishment of the United States authorized to issue Treasury checks or for which checks drawn on the United States Treasury are issued. Cancellation or canceled means that a Treasury check is no longer a valid instrument. So again, when we're doing that cancellation of debt to the IRS, that's noting that those are Treasury checks. They're all Treasury checks, folks. That's where the conversion is from the Federal Reserve note, which is a reserve currency, to the national currency, which is a Treasury check backed by a credit system, or actually maybe even a material asset system of some sort through maybe a postal real estate investment trust. I'm not sure. Don't ask me. I'm just posing a possibility. Anyway, certifying agency means any agency authorizing the issuance of a payment by a dispersing official in accordance with 31 U.S.C. 3325. So just a mere function of authorizing the payment. You are the certifying agency. Even if you're not an agent, you are a certifying agency. That's why they need your signature. That's what certifies that document is true and correct. You place all your data elements on there and then put a signature on there. And they're going to use it for their administrations of their agencies. Department, you've just been instrumentalized, indoctrinated through a public education system that taught you to remember your name when you were a little kid and your address so they could return you home if you ever got lost. And then they spend the rest of your life kidnapping you for any reason they can think of. You and your children both, DHS, the police. Oh my goodness, he got a traffic violation 6 years ago, didn't pay it. It's racked up interest and everything. Now it's 3 times as what it was. We better go get that son of a bitch and throw him in jail and teach him a lesson. Excuse me? Traffic citations are unarrestable offenses, folks. So why are all these people sitting in jail for traffic violations? Ask the U.S. Department of Justice. Are traffic violations arrestable offenses? No. So what are they doing? Well, there's a non-payment of fine. Well, now is that a debtor's prison? See, they're stuck in all corners. If you understand what they're doing, they're insane. Counterfeit check means a document that purports to be an authentic check drawn on the United States Treasury, but in fact is not an authentic check. And it says nothing else but check drawn on the United States Treasury. Not on a Federal Reserve Bank. On the United States Treasury. Counterfeit check. So anytime anybody says that that's a counterfeit check, really, by that definition, that's a United States Treasury drawing. Was that check drawn on the United States Treasury? Why are you claiming it was drawn on the U.S. bank? See, you're obligated to a higher obligation. I don't care who the fuck you are. Declination means the process by which Treasury refuses to make final payment on a check, declines payment by instructing a Federal Reserve Bank to reverse its provisional credit to a presenting bank. Provisional credit, is that in these set of definitions? Let's look down here and see if it is. Yep. So we'll look at that. Declination date means the date on which Treasury issues the declination. Disbursing official means an official, including an official of the Department of Treasury, Department of Defense, any government corporation. Would that be like a United States business known as a United States citizen? Are you making are you making that claim yourself? Are you the United States citizen? Are you the resident as a United States business? Or any official of the United States designated by the Secretary of Treasury authorized to disperse public money? To disperse public money. Were you authorized to disperse those Federal Reserve notes under 12 U.S.C. 411? No. You are not a fully qualified transfer agent of the Federal Reserve System working for a Federal Reserve financial institution. Drawer's signature means the signature of a disbursing official placed on the front of a Treasury check as the drawer of the check. Federal Reserve Processing Center means a Federal Reserve Bank center that images Treasury checks for archiving check information and transmitting such information to the Treasury. Now tell me how powerful the Federal Reserve is if they are the intermediary. Is that not telling us that they are the trustee for the United States Treasury? Financial institution means an insured bank, any mutual savings, any savings bank, any insured credit union, any savings association, any financial institution outside of the United States, if it has been designated by the Secretary of the Treasury as a depository of public money. You got Federal Reserve notes in your wallet? Were you born outside of the United States but declared that you were born in the United States, but yet the record shows that you're a resident of the state and thereby born in the state? Oh, goodness. You've been lying all along, haven't you? And now you're committing a felony holding the Federal Reserve notes, and you're not a transfer agent. And you're carrying an ID that says you are. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you insane? And has been permitted to charge checks to the general account of the United States Treasury. Is that the general ledger? General account. I mean, you are generally authorized through the Social Security Administration. That's what that authorization is. So that in the general public, any document that's offered to the general public And they're agreed, yeah, well, yeah, if it's offered to you for a benefit or something from a government agency, yeah, go ahead and sign it. They indoctrinated you, people. Guarantor means a financial institution that presents a check for payment in any prior endorsers of a check. So when that company, that transmitting utility, presented a check for payment, they are the guarantor. So when you qualify your signature and that negative amount for returning credit, they are obligated to then extend that credit for that special deposit, because you're going to deposit right back with them. They're the financial institution guaranteeing in honor as holder in due course to extend that document to you, the treasury check, and you have ability as holder in due course to enforce it for its treasury check formation. Master account means the record of financial rights and obligations of an account holder of the Federal Reserve Bank with respect to each other, without the transfer agent. See, it's the Federal Reserve that has an account. And with respect to you, as a holder of one of those accounts, there are rights and obligations. When you signed that account or signed up for that account, did you qualify your signature so that you didn't hand over your rights, titles, and interest to the property, fulfilling that or qualifying that you no longer have any rights, but you somehow seem to have obligations? And they've taken and swapped all the obligations onto you and taken all of the rights, titles, and interest in the property. Doesn't sound too equitous to me. But when you learn how to do this on these forms, they technically aren't supposed to be able to come back at you on it. And like I said, we're getting some successes here and there on a lot of these different things. We've got a lady that's still in a home after they tried to do foreclosure, and the sheriff tried to give her a eviction notice. Still in the home. Correcting the material defects by requesting the documentary evidence of the underlying obligations. That's as simple as it gets. Material defect or alteration means the counterfeiting of a check or any physical change on a check, including but not limited to a change in the amount, date, payee name, or other identifying information printed on the front or back of the check, but not including a forged or unauthorized drawer signature. Material defect or alteration. So you can alter the document. Again, this is the clarification that when they use those documents, they're going to put down the legal name, and you can put an alteration on there by using other identifying information known as the benefactor and qualifying the capacity of that legal name that they are using that they got from you. To usufruct, demand that it be used appropriately so that the numbering can be used appropriately. I have no qualified use for this number if it can't be used appropriately. Minor means the term minor as defined under applicable state law. So here we have a federal code with a definition under money and finance. Even though Congress shall lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, but they're letting the state define the term minor, for which that term is used in the federal code. Oops. Do you see the inconsistency? Monthly statement. This is plain writing, folks, and it has to do with money and finance. So when the transmitting utility is, or the utility company or the water company or anybody sending you a bill through the mail, and it's been posted to that individual's account, and there's an individual's name and a number identifying that account. Monthly statement means a statement prepared by Treasury that includes the following information regarding each outstanding reclamation. Anybody got any views on this one here? I mean, it hits me right in the face. If that Treasury check is a reclamation, like we've been talking about in these review videos, that means they're supposed to send you a check, right? I mean, you are reclaiming something of interest. Isn't that what we're talking about there? Reclamation date, reclamation number, check identifying information, and the balance due, including interest, penalties, and administrative costs. That's that 1099-C. The cancellation of the debt. That's that information. Original check means the first paper check drawn on the United States Treasury with respect to a particular payment transaction. Payee means the person that the certifying agency designated to receive payment. If you're the payee and you're supposed to make the payment as the payer, where's your payment? Because you're the certifying agency, right? You're the one giving that signature. That's what certifies it. You understand that? Again, you're the ones with the power. The pen is mightier than the sword. And the language is beautiful because once you learn how twisted it is, you can learn to untwist it and see it for what it truly is. Payee means the person that the certifying agency, you're the one signing for the person. He's the payee. It's the payee designated to receive payment. Person means individual, institution, including a financial institution, or any other type of entity. The singular includes the plural. That's 1 USC1, folks. Remember the view on that, the video on that? The insanity. Presenting bank means a financial institution which either directly or through a correspondent banking relationship Are you in a correspondent banking relationship? If so, that is the definition of a financial institution presents checks to and receives provisional credit from a Federal Reserve Bank. Do you present a check to the bank? Do you get that employment check and run down to the bank and deposit it right into that bank, and then they turn around and give you provisional credit? That's all it takes, folks. You're performing that function of a financial institution. You are functionally performing the activities that are required of a financial institution known as a dummy corporation. A depository, and I've done a video on that too. Maybe we'll do a review on that sometime. A depository, which is authorized to charge checks directly to Treasury's general account and present them to Treasury for payment through a designated Federal Reserve Bank. So again, you can send it back to the utility company, or you can present it to your bank. In sending it back to the utility company, it's given with an instruction to the trustee or commissioner to deal with their banker, their Federal Reserve Bank, or the Treasury. That's that directive, that stamp directive page of the Treasury. Provisional credit means the initial credit provided to a presenting bank by a Federal Reserve Bank. Where do they get that provisional credit? It's the initial credit provided to a presenting bank by a Federal Reserve Bank. That's that full faith and credit establishment through the enumeration at birth, establishing the legal name, and that burial trust through the Social Security Administration and your state's home or Health and Human Services. That's the probated estate. Every state through the Health and Human Services has an estate recovery program, which is specifically for the state to recover its expenses that it paid out during the life of the estate. But they're not supposed to collect that while the testator is still alive. That's the problem. That's fine if they want to operate that estate trust after I'm dead. But you can't use the capacity of that probated estate against a man who is in fact living. That goes against the will of life. Just because you want to get paid for your job doesn't mean you take it out of the man. You have a provisional credit system that allows for you to get paid regardless. Learn how to use it. That's what we have today, folks. We have the same thing as the emergence or the merging of equity with common law. We now have merging of money with credit. They're actually able to start defining your actions as your merits, your spiritual credence. This is a faithful saying. I will that thou affirm constantly that he who believed in God be careful to maintain good works. These things are good and profitable unto men. Treasury may reverse a provisional credit until Treasury deems completion of first examination or final payment made pursuant to 240. See, nobody else is determining final payment. That's why I said that document I've got, that financial index, says it's a summary judgment. So all I got to do is make a declaratory judgment, have everybody acquiesce, and boom, now we have a final payment, final judgment. Okay, the record is settled and cleared. Anything left over is a remainder, and it goes back to the principal, the initial presentment. It's a repayment. Reasonable efforts means, at a minimum, confirming the validity of a check by obtaining the check return information prior to making the funds from the check available for withdrawal. So when I've got this correction or this collections letter and it's got a Treasury check on there, I want to know from the Treasury if that's a valid check. I want to know the documentary evidence proving the underlying obligation of a valid Treasury check for this commercial transaction that this guy is trying to engage in, and using the name of a United States citizen and trying to get funds from the United States for that, through that United States citizen, without understanding the capacity. See, I'm not an agent. See, you're only supposed to be able to get that stuff from those agents. And they're only supposed to be transferring that stuff to other agents. except when the check return information has not been provided within the applicable time frame prescribed by Regulation CC, and making funds available for withdrawal is necessary to comply with Regulation CC. However, this exception does not apply if the presenting bank is otherwise subject to liability due to the presentment guarantees found in 240.4. See, when this debt collector is presenting a false instrumentality known as a negotiable instrument, prima facie evidence on the face, it says it's an offer. That's a negotiable instrument, an obligation or other security of the United States. Clearly, in form, it's got a check-looking thing on the bottom. And I want to know the documentary evidence by a validity check of the Treasury if that debt is valid. See, I call the Treasury every 6 months on my own situation, and they have yet to tell me that anybody has a debt against me, despite the fact that this local county courthouse wants to sit there and say there's over $8,600 and some dollars or whatever. And this has been going on 7 years. The next one I've got is that 31 U.S. Code 3701 for definitions, concurring with the CFR we just read. And this is that A1 that it mentioned for the administrative offset. And here we go, folks. It means withholding funds payable by the United States. See, the funds aren't paid by anybody else, folks. They're not paid by the IRS. They're not paid by the Federal Reserve. They're not paid by the Department of Defense. They're not paid. The means withholding funds payable by the United States, including funds payable by the United States on behalf of a state government. See the inconsistency of a state coming after me for government money that belongs to the United States? The individual so named and identified by the name and number is a record. Can't they just go to the United States and get that record and have those credits transferred? Why are they trying to dogmatically come after me and kill me? If they'd have just left me alone, understand this, folks. If they'd have just left me alone, I wouldn't be on them. I'd probably still have a job and paying the Federal Reserve notes and everything and doing just fine. But since they keep coming after me and taking my property, now I got to figure out why. Because as long as I was able to live and work, I've always been a hard-working man, and I've always built myself up quick. For crying out loud, I spent 6 months working in the packing plant after I got out of prison when I was 23 years old. Started my own goddamn business, ran it for 10 fucking years, sales and marketing, working 14 to 18, 20 hours a day sometimes. And I didn't pay taxes through the IRS. I paid them directly through my contracts. Each event I did, everything I did, everything I brought in, 10% went directly to a local organization. Open contract. Using their name in the advertisement. When they start slinging those names and numbers out there, and this is the point where I'm getting at with my companion. They're trying to come after my companion for all her stuff too now. And this is getting ridiculous. These people already have access to the credit, then use the fucking credit. Because that's truly how it works. All you got to do is say, okay, well, this guy has this much in his account now. Okay, Federal Reserve will say, okay, well, if he wants to come draw these Federal Reserve notes, we got him on a good felony. We'll go ahead and give them to him. That's how they want to operate. That's fine. Like I said, transfer agent to transfer agent. It's a banking institution, and they're all tellers. They're all supposed to run around telling on each other. Leave my name out of it. And this is, again, 31 U.S. Code 3701 here, conferring with the 31 CFR we just got done with. And then it goes on to say, means withholding funds payable by the United States to, or withheld or held by the United States for a person to satisfy a claim. And we're going to take a look at this here in a minute too. Claim and something else. The financial institution that we looked at in the CFR. I'm going to show you. Or no, I think we already saw it. Yeah, we already saw the financial institution. That was in those definitions. But we're going to show you this definition of claim here in a minute. Consumer Reporting Agency means, as that term is defined in Section 603F of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, 15 U.S.C. 1681 AF, or a person that, for money or on a cooperative basis, regularly gets information on consumers to give information to a consumer reporting agency. You keep giving information, so the presumption is that you got the information and are giving it to a consumer reporting agency, no matter where you're at. It's all a statistical record, folks. Statist, IC. Statistic. Statist, IC. Why are you giving them all that information? Data elements, again, a number in lieu of the name and address, serves as a marketing agent under an arrangement allowing a third party to get the information from a consumer reporting agency. So when the officer pulls you over alongside the road as a third party and he wants to get the information, you are the consumer reporting agency. You are both the male and the female. You are both singular and plural, and they will use you at their discretion for the involuntary servitude until you learn your slavery. Executive, judicial, or legislative agency means a department, agency, court, court administrative office, or instrumentality in the executive, judicial, or legislative branch of government. See, that's where they fail. Executive, judicial, or legislative agency, and they use it in the definition. Executive, judicial, or legislative branch does not define executive, judicial, or legislative agency of government, including government corporations. So we see it's including, which means it excludes everything else. So everything that's a government corporation. And a government corporation is not just a government-owned corporation, but a government-owned or controlled corporation. So as long as you have a license to abide by the laws of the United States in order to run your business, you are a government corporation. Are you a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent? See, these are inconsistencies that you evidently don't understand in the language. So when they talk about the corp, the body, they're not talking about a dead body. Don't ever mistake that corpse means dead body. It never means dead body. It means body by itself. Military department means the Department of Army, Navy, and Air Force. System of records has the same meaning given that term in Section 552A5 of Title V. Remember that? That's at records maintained on individuals. Uniform services. See, this is all in money and finance, folks. It's the United States, and it gets right into the trust law and military. Government, military. Military, government. It's all about record keeping. Uniformed services means the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, Coast Guard, Commissioned Corps of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Commissioned Corps of the Public Health Services. Health and Human Services, again, is the one that maintains the probated estate, and they're the ones required through federal code to operate the estate recovery program in every state. Non-tax means with respect to any debt or claim other than a debt or claim under the Internal Revenue Code. That's kind of like saying with respect to any male or female other than a male or female. You see what I'm saying? Is that fucking insane or what? In subchapter 2 of this chapter, and subsection A8 of this section, the term claim or debt means any amount of funds or property that has been determined by an appropriate official of the federal government. Remember, federal government means all entities of the government of the United States. That's all those corporations. You have to claim to be a corporate entity, a United States business, a United States citizen, to be owed to the United States by a person, organization, or entity other than federal agency. A claim includes, without limitation, funds owed on account of loans made, insured, or guaranteed by the government. So again, if it's made by the government and you're claiming it from me, but it's your actual claim through that identification is a claim against the United States, how is that? See, everything's funded by the United States, and they're supposedly making a claim on behalf of the United States that somebody owes the debt to them as a government corporation or government-controlled corporation doing business as a United States business. See, as a United States business claiming somebody owes you money and then going after that money through an obligation or other security of the United States is in fact making a claim against the very United States itself, you morons. You got anything to say on that yet here, Rush? You're awful quiet there.
Yeah, I kind of, you know me, I agree. I mean, I see it articulated the same way. I mean, all of this is upside down, and it's just all insanity.
Yep, absolutely. The bank did a UCC on the house or loan, Chris Hauser, just not his dad's. Yeah, see, that's what they're doing. They're coming in, like I said, if you don't sign these documents, they'll come in and do that cancellation of the debt and claim the property themselves. That's how they're doing it. That's how they're doing all these swaps. Iman says, can you describe the OR and the EE, the trustee versus the trustor? The trustor is the one that creates the trust. He is the living being. He is the one that signs on the document, whereas the trustee is the person named in the document, and that's the distinct difference. The legal name versus the living man. The trustor is always going to be the living man. The benefactor is always going to be the living man. The grantor is always going to be the living man. The grantee, trustee, beneficiary, persons. So let's look at the next one. And this is 31 CFR Part 285 that we saw earlier. And this is the debt collection authorities under the Debt Collection Improvement Act of 1996. Dispersing official offset. Collection of past due support by administrative offset. collecting past due support by administrative offset. Offset of tax refund payments to collect past due legally enforceable non-tax debt. How is it legally enforceable non-tax debt? If it's an offset of tax refund and the government operates on taxes. See, the administrative offset is the offset of the funding of taxes to run the government. So how has the government grown so large? Because they're not actually running on taxes. They're running on all those abandoned funds. And as trustees, they get to use them as investments. And as trustees, they get to make a percentage on those investments. This is why they like to make them big pools and pool large investments. Offset of federal benefit payments to collect past due legally enforceable non-tax debt. Centralized offset of federal payments to collect non-tax debts owed to the United States. Again, if you're considered a United States business, as a United States citizen, and you have a job, and they call it income, and they require you to pay taxes, again, you're just paying taxes to your own damn self, United States. Do you not understand this, folks? Let me give you a little history in math. Before we go on that, though, administrative offset under reciprocal agreements with states. Administrative offset under reciprocal agreement with states. There's already an administrative offset under a reciprocal agreement. Don't you think as a benefactor you would qualify for that same administrative offset that they're holding amongst themselves and holding each other indemnified for? Wouldn't that prove that, yeah, you're doing your job by not holding it against the benefactor? Because merely by doing your job as you say you're doing, I'm just doing my job. But in doing that, you're violating the benefactor and the beneficiary because that record isn't quite so integral as you think. It is in error, and you refuse to listen to the people that are telling you that it's in error. It doesn't sound like you're using your reciprocal agreement very well. It doesn't sound like you understand contracts and trust law very well. Sounds like you shouldn't really have a job in such an administrative position. So let's look at the math on something real quick. Got a pen and paper? We're going to write something down here. We're going to take 1 times 1. What do you get? It remains the same. You can take 1.0 multiplied times 1.0. What do you get? It remains the same. However, if you move that 1 over either direction, 1 place over on the positive side of that decimal point, and now you have a space, and that's 10. That's the tens place. So now you have 10 times 10. What do you get? You don't get 10. You get 100, right? Obvious. So it moves itself over automatically 1 decimal point, right? So what happens is you take 0.1 times 0.1. You get, of course, 0.1. So what happens if you move that decimal point over 1 and have that empty space, and now you have 0.01 multiplied times 0.01? Do you get 1? Again, you get 0.001. So again, that decimal plays an important role in enumerations. And if you understand that math right there, in accordance to a penny, if you take a penny times a penny, what do you get? According to math, a penny is 0.01. So if you take 1 penny times itself, somehow by that math, you all of a sudden have less. You see how this system works? The image and likeness on the other side. If you have a dime times a dime, you now have 10 times more. Why is it the one is so unique? Or is it the decimal point that's so unique? Excuse me. Why is the decimal point so unique? You think they use this percentum system of money for a reason? They know full well what they're doing. It's called tontine banking principle. You got that dollar in your hand? You take $1 times $1, what do you get? You get 1.0. How many pennies is that? 100. So anyway, let's get back to the last definition here. This is claim under 31 USC 3701B2. Claim. For purposes of section 3716 of this title, each of the terms claim and debt includes an amount of funds or property owed by a person to a state, the District of Columbia, American Samoa, Guam, the United States, Virgin Islands, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, or the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Where's the United States? Because that's not the United States. That's the United States Virgin Islands. But it does say the District of Columbia, and we all know the United States is located in the District of Columbia. How do you owe a debt to the District of Columbia? Anybody? District of Columbia is a corporate entity solely alone by itself, not a polity, not a religion, not a military, just a corporation. And it's chartered a United States corporation to operate and regulate a form of federal government. And that's it. Everything they pose as a debt is a false debt against the people. Because as we see in those definitions, the Federal Reserve operates on a provisional credit system. The credit's already provided by the documentation, which allows them to assess a value for its future use, its investment purposes, interest, and inflation, so that it can profit off of it over a standing period of time. Offset sounds like a debtor's bank balance, whereas set off sounds like what we are afforded. Yeah, you can technically say that. but basically what it is there's a charge that's been placed on a record. And you're going to offset it because of the factual elements are not true and correct, and therefore it's either an inconsistency that gives you a little ability to draw back or withdraw back to a certain point where it might be a little more consistent, and then go from there, or it creates such inconsistencies repetitively that you have to keep going back farther and farther, and proves that it's an impossibility. So again, it's a matter of learning and understanding that these are negotiable instruments, and you have to learn how to negotiate. This comes down to your communication skills and the lingua franca. The language is used to communicate with each other and showing the rights, duties, responsibilities, obligations through that language. Like we saw with the video at the beginning, guy had no problem letting him know, hey, I'm already under supervision. What are you going to do about it? You're making a false claim against somebody else that already has jurisdiction. It's that simple. Same with you people still having children at the hospital. Like I said, that's a military installation. And unless you learn how to qualify that instrumentality, that documentation that they're going to provide as evidence of a United States citizen, you have to counter that. You have to, like I said here, counterbalance that. You have to set it off what it is. They're trying to establish a standing point in the legal fiction that will supersede you, and you have to set that off to the side and let them know, I stand my square. This is how you'll see me. Child of God, legacy heir.
I got posed. Well, I got a phone call today. You know a little about my situation. I'm not gonna say too much on here, but they're looking to, I guess, refinance and possibly needing my signature and everything. So I'm really gonna have to buckle up on this one.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
I don't, I don't know how in good faith that I can go through without,
Well, like I said, I got my birth certificates. I got 3 of them, and I plan on, I believe, like I said, getting with the Treasury, of course, on the one, with the record, the local courts with one, and the bank with one. Establishing the bank account in the trust name with the certificate on special deposit. Again, with a directive for the settlement and correction of the records, clearing of the records through that, expenses incidental to transfer of the title. Remember, we discussed those 3, to the agency, to the United States, and to the Postal Service. And that's the cancellation of that debt, that balancing of the out of balance account with the general ledger. Where else would you balance it? So anyway, that brings us to the end of our stream tonight. And if you got anything else to say on the way out, Russ, please do so.
Just as always,
share the subscribe button.
Be the change you wish to see. Much love, everybody, and many blessings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do not know what's going on with my virtual background stuff, but I've had problems with it since yesterday. Thought I still had it on, but it's not doing it. My apologies for the messy background, I guess. Just a bunch of Post-it notes, I guess. Anyway, know that I love you folks, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back or not. And that's to say I don't care if you hate me or don't respect me. That's on you. So may y'all be blessed by God and have a good night.